All right, today we're diving into something new and, honestly, pretty cool in the world of AI, the Diffusion LLM. Now, you've probably heard all about models like GPT, right? Well, this is a totally different way of thinking. And to get it, we're going to use a simple analogy. What's the difference between a writer and an expert who restores ancient artifacts?
And this one idea, this one comparison is really the key to unlocking the whole thing. It explains how these two types of AI look at language and really the world in completely different ways.
So, on one side, you've got the writer. That's your classic GPT. It starts on a blank page, writes the first word, then the second, then the third, always moving forward, never going back to change what it's already written. But on the other side, you have the restoration expert. That's our Diffusion LLM. It doesn't start at the beginning. It looks at a whole damaged picture, like an ancient scroll with missing pieces, and it fills in all the gaps at the same time, using clues from above, below, left, and right to make the entire thing make sense.
Okay, so to understand how our expert learns to restore things, we first have to look at a step that sounds, well, completely backwards. Before it can learn to create, it has to learn how things fall apart. This is what we call the forward process.
You see, the training for a dLLM is pretty unique. We don't just feed it a library of perfect books. Instead, we take a perfectly good sentence and we systematically destroy it, little by little. We're basically showing it a movie, frame by frame, of a sentence decaying from crystal clarity into just random noise. The whole goal is to teach the AI how to play that movie in reverse.
And what's really fascinating here is that this isn't random. Look at the steps. At step 1, maybe a quarter of the words are masked. At step 2, half of them are gone. It's a predictable schedule of destruction. And why do we do this? Well, it teaches the model how to deal with all kinds of problems, from fixing a single missing word to having to reconstruct an entire idea from absolutely nothing.
And now for the magic. Once the model knows how destruction works, we can give it that very last frame of the movie, pure chaos, just a bunch of blank slots, and ask it to create something totally new. This is the reverse process.
So this brings us to the big puzzle, right? If the model is just staring at a blank canvas, a bunch of empty slots, how in the world does it even know where to start? How does it make that first mark to break the total emptiness?
Well, the secret is it's not really starting from nothing. It has something called a prior. Think of this as a huge, built-in library of knowledge about how language works. After all its training, it just knows, statistically, that a sentence in English is way more likely to start with the word the than, say, the word purple. So even in a total vacuum, it can make a pretty good first guess.
But, and this is crucial, it doesn't just pick the most obvious word. If it did that every time, it would just write the same boring sentence over and over again. So instead, for every empty space, it kind of rolls a weighted dice. The might have a 15% chance, A might have a 10% chance, and so on. That little bit of randomness is absolutely essential. It's what sparks creativity and makes sure you get different, interesting results each time.
And this is the perfect way to picture how it all comes together. It's just like solving a crossword puzzle. The model uses its prior knowledge and that dice roll to put down a few words it's pretty confident about. Maybe it drops the at the beginning and fox somewhere near the end. These are its anchor words. They're the first pieces on the board that give it a structure to build everything else around. So once those first anchors are set, the whole game changes. It's not just a wild guess anymore. And this is where the real superpower of the Diffusion LLM starts to shine, its ability to refine its own work.
Now that it has the words the and fox on the page, the puzzle gets way easier. The model isn't just guessing in the dark anymore. It can look at the context, the, something, fox, and make a much more logical deduction, like, the missing words are probably adjectives that describe a fox.
Just watch this polishing process in action. It starts with nothing but noise. Then it puts down a rough draft, maybe the red. Then it adds more detail, getting to the quick red fox. But here's the incredible part. It looks at the whole sentence together and thinks, you know what? The phrase is almost always brown fox. So in the final step, it actually goes back and edits its own word, changing red to brown.
And that, right there, that is the absolute game changer. A traditional LLM, our writer, simply cannot do that. Once it writes a word, it moves on. It's set in stone. But the dLLM, our restoration expert, is constantly looking at the whole picture, making changes, polishing its work, and refining everything until the entire piece is perfect.
So let's just put it all together. When you stick these two approaches side by side, the fundamental differences really just pop right out.
It really boils down to three key things.
A traditional LLM like GPT works in one direction, left to right. It only cares about guessing the very next word. And, most importantly, it can't go back and make corrections. A diffusion LLM, on the other hand, works globally. It sees everything at once. It targets all the missing words simultaneously. And its native ability, its core strength, is to refine and edit its own work over and over again.
Which leads us with a pretty fascinating question to chew on. If one AI is a fast-moving author that's committed to its first draft, and the other is a meticulous artist and editor that can rethink every single choice to perfect the final piece, which one, in the end, is going to tell the better story?